Welcome to Beyond by Wings, the business side of dentistry, brought to you by Edwards and Associates PC. Join us as we discuss how to build your dental practice, optimize your income, and plan for your future. This podcast is distributed with the understanding that Edwards and Associates PC is not rendering legal, accounting, or professional advice. Listeners should consult with their business advisors before acting on any of the information that is shared. At Edwards and Associates PC, our business is the business of dentistry. For help or more information, visit our website at enassociates.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of Beyond by Wings. My name is Ash, and today I have a very special guest joining me, Kelly Majdan. He's the VP at One Digital and founder of Power Through Wellness. Now, Kelly is a rare blend of retirement strategist and wellness coach, helping professionals think beyond just the numbers. He's here to help us explore the intersection of wealth and well-being, and why both are essential to building a life and a retirement that truly lasts. If you're a practice owner who's wondering how to care for your team, plan for your future, and preserve your health along the way, this episode is for you. Without further ado, Kelly, how are you doing today?
I'm wonderful, Ash. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you so much for being on our episode today.
Oh, a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Right. Now, Kelly, you have such a unique background, both as a retirement planning leader and a wellness advocate. How did you bring those two worlds together?
Well, I'll give you the cliff notes. So, obviously, part of it always comes from a personal journey, right? But also from a work journey. But my husband had brain surgery back in 2014, and we were in our mid 40s, and we had to do a lot to correct our own personal wellness ship. And along with our own personal journey, and I've been working in the retirement services industry, working and meeting one-on-one with employees for several years, hundreds of meetings. The two things I've always see impact all of our retirement, our later years, I don't even want to say retirement anymore because I think I'm going to work forever, is our health and our wealth. And the biggest thing that has, if you want to the biggest impact to how much your savings is going to stretch for you in your retirement years is going to be how healthy you are. And just seeing that impact, or seeing, observing as I speak with employees and employers over the years, it just made me know, okay, we got to figure out a way to bring these two conversations together because they're so vital to do so. So I discovered that I went back to school to become a board certified health and wellness coach. So not only am I a financial coach and do all the stuff on the retirement side from a financial perspective, I am also a wellness financial or a health and wellness coach. So, and it's been fun to kind of pull all these together and be able to also expand that conversation with people as well, too. So that's the Cliff Notes, I guess, version of how that all came together.
Yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, I can easily see how those two go hand in hand, but in all honesty, with all the people that I work with, I don't think there's one that has ever emphasized on the health part of it. Aside from like, yes, you should be, taking care of your health, extend your lifespan, so you can keep the funds in your retirement vehicles longer so they can grow to that point. But other than that, I haven't heard them getting more too involved with that part. So it's nice to hear that there's someone here who's thought about it and has put in the time to actually educate themselves on how not only is it important, but coming up with numbers to actually substantiate that.
It is. It's really, I think we don't recognize it as much until we do a deeper dive. And I personally didn't until I had my own personal experience. And I think that's the biggest thing too, is that most of us don't really recognize the connection until you have something personally happen for you. And, when you start to see that and you start looking at it, and of course there's been a lot of folks in our industry that have, really pulled back the numbers, and you'll hear these very scary numbers, like you're going to need somewhere about, I think the latest number is over 300,000 saved just for healthcare needs in your retirement. And that really kind of it actually will vary based on how healthy you are. So again, it's one of those, if you really want your money to stretch for you and you really also want to enjoy your later years, I mean, that's part of the point too, right?
Mhm.
Saving up all this money so you can, live your later years well, not just living. There's a big difference there.
No, there is absolutely. It's not just being able to pay your bills and sustain yourself month to month, but at the same time be able to, pursue those things that you've always wanted to do in your retired years.
And feel good doing it. Like, don't you want to feel good later on doing it too and not be like, oh, this hurts, or oh, I can't get out of bed, or I mean, who would rather, would you rather spend your time in doctor offices or would you rather spend your time hopping on and off a tour bus somewhere and, enjoying the sights?
Yeah, exactly. Or getting a little extra time with your family members.
Right, exactly. Getting up off the floor with their grandkids. So,
Hmm.
all those little things have everything to do with how you take care of yourself today and how you plan for the future. I've got this one exercise program that I do, and every once in a while, the leader will sit there and as we're doing our stretching, he says, "And you're investing in your 401k as you did the stretching." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I totally relate."
Wow, that's fantastic. I would love to see that video if you record those sessions.
Exactly. I'm like, you're talking my language.
Oh goodness! Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I'm sure it's nice to work with clients that are the same wavelength as yours.
It is nice when I come across them. We discussed a little bit before this. It's obvious as it sounds, and as we have this conversation, all of us will probably be nodding our head and agreeing and going, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, we need to do it." But finding employers that really truly embrace it is uh, well, I guess is a little challenging sometimes. As much as they know, we all know we're supposed to eat well, sometimes actually implementation is a lot harder than you think.
Now, let's talk a little bit about 401k planning.
Okay.
What are the most common misconceptions you hear from small business owners, especially dentists or other medical professionals?
It's expensive.
Mhm.
Um, there's a lot of administrative hurdles. I don't understand it. I don't want to do it yet. I don't want to provide a match yet, or I don't want to contribute to it yet. There's a lot of, I'll get to it at some point. Those are probably the biggest hurdles I've heard from a lot of dental offices. I don't think a lot of times they don't feel they have the cash flow yet through the additional cash flow in order to be able to implement a plan. But there's lots of ways to be able to maneuver around that, and it's not as expensive as they think. And if they're not ready for an employer contribution, it's not necessarily something that they have to provide right away.
Hmm. And since we are talking about the cost, I think it would also be a good place to mention that there are specific tax credits also available for people that are implementing 401k for the first time that can easily
Exactly.
offset a lot of that cost.
Absolutely. There definitely is a lot of there's a Secure 2.0 regulation came through
Mhm.
and have increased the amount of tax credits that employers can get. And actually prior to going on this call, I was updating a spreadsheet on all the state mandated plans. So you also have some of those that are out there depending on what state that you reside in. So, and then, there's then becomes a decision as to opting into the state plan or using the 401 using your own standalone plan, and there's pros and cons to both. But there's credits that you get if you already have a plan and you haven't done auto enrollment. There's credits that you get for that as well too, for establishing that. So it's not nearly as expensive as I think a lot of people or a lot of employers feel, especially when you compare the cost for other benefits that are provided, like health benefits.
Right, right. And it is true. A lot of times when they talk with people like us, we talk about the big tax savings they could have with retirement funding. And like you mentioned, one of the excuses that they give is, my cash flow isn't there yet.
Yeah.
We hear that too. They're like, okay, I hear you. However, I don't think my practice is making enough cash to be able to fund those other vehicles. Now, they could still consider setting up a 401k with just deferrals only, right?
Absolutely, and I have a lot of plans that do that when they start up. And, and it's all in the plan design, and it's easy to do so, to set up a plan that just, we set up the plan as an optional employer contribution, whether it be a match or whether it just be what they call non-elective, which is basically just or you can give it like a profit sharing contribution. Those can be set up as optional and just be available for you in the plan when you're ready to utilize them. So a lot of people think, oh, I have to have a contribution, and you don't. Now, granted, if you can provide a contribution that is a much, that goes miles for recruiting and retention of staff, but you don't have to do so right away if you don't feel like you have the cash flow to be able to do so. And one thing from a tax perspective too, and I'm sure Ash, you can chime in on this one, any cost, which would be the cost to run the plan or the cost to fund it from an employer contribution, all of those are deductible expenses for the employer, hence
That
from
is
a
correct.
tax benefit.
That is correct. Any out-of-pocket expense, completely, fully tax deductible.
Yep. So that's, that kind of helps offset a little bit as well too, especially when working with wonderful CPAs.
Mhm. The other thing, I'm also wanting our listeners and maybe some of our clients to understand that there's a huge cost at not considering setting up a retirement. It's not just the tax benefits. There are some other things that they're foregoing. Uh,
Yes. A lot of one of the biggest things that we see, not just on the employer side, but on the employee side. I was reading something earlier that was talking about how it was, over, I think 60% of dentists report that they have hiring challenges, and that there's such a competition for finding qualified dental professionals. And one of the biggest things that, if from a recruiting and retention, is offering benefits, and a retirement benefit is
right.
definitely one of the things that people are looking for. So when you add in like kind of those hidden costs that could be hurting your organization, one of those is supporting financial wellness of your employees and allowing them to be able to have a vehicle for them to save in. So there's one component of that. And then from the employer standpoint, though, for the practitioner, if you spend so much time putting all your time and effort into building your business, and kind of, and I'm sure you probably see this as well too, because we see this a ton. You don't think about what does your later years look like, and it's so hard to picture it for all of us. But we all know the later we start saving for something, the more we have to kind of sacrifice from a financial perspective. Now, you might be in a better position to do so later on, but that does also really cut into what you are going to have for your later years when you're looking at, okay, you know what, I'm done with the dental practice. I want to go enjoy my time. So there's that cost benefit as well too. Not just from a recruiting and retention, but also for your standpoint and your lifestyle later on in your years.
Yeah, I'm glad you actually mentioned that because you're right. Those are some of the factors that a lot of the candidates are looking for when they're applying for a job at a dental practice, whether it be front desk area or back office. I remember there was a time when I used to talk to clients and we would talk about providing employee benefits. They would always say, I think my employees would prefer a bonus more than any of the benefits that I have to provide. I don't think they even care about that. And to some degree, that was true. But I'm talking about at least, I don't know, 8, 9 years ago. But these days, I feel like employees are more educated about
Yes.
their financial well being. I think most of them know what a 401k plan is. They know how to invest them, where to invest them, how often to keep an eye on them, and then how the match works, the additional optional match if it's available. And they look for those things when they're applying for a job. For a business to not think about implementing employee benefits, whether it be retirement or other kinds of benefits, I think it makes them lose their competitive advantage. And then I know sometimes we also get asked, like, oh, I'm not a DSO. I don't have economies of scale working for me. For me, the cost would be too high. But as you just mentioned, it doesn't have to be. In fact, if you have less than 50 employees, there are special ways to go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there's two things there and what you just said was, one for the second one was there are lots of ways that you can go about it. And there's lots of different programs, different types of retirement programs that you can implement from what we call pooled employer plans could give you some economies of scale in that respect and help reduce some administrative burden. But there's also a lot of our record keepers who offer the vehicle for which you would utilize a 401k plan or is they've really become very competitive in nature as well too, and they want your business, so they're really providing other cost savings to employers in order to be able to utilize them and to encourage people to be able to join and utilize a 401k plan. So you mentioned earlier about people being more aware of the benefits of a 401k plan, and that employers used to think that a bonus was really what they were looking for. And I hear you 100% because I heard that as well too. I'm like, oh, I think they would just rather have the bonus than they would the 401k. That has completely changed. And we have a more educated generation that is, looking for employment with our millennials and our Gen Zs. They really understand the benefit of having a retirement plan. And a lot of it has to do with what they've seen their parents go through. So they've seen their parents go through the fact that they're struggling to meet their retirement needs because they either didn't save in a retirement plan or didn't have one available for them, or maybe, started saving later in their years. And so it's kind of really unique. And I really love to see this. We have a younger workforce that actually understands the value of being able to save for their future years. And all the talk of whether or not Social Security is going to be there for them, that it's going to be, defunct or however that's going to work. They're fearful that there's not going to be that social safety net for them. So most, and especially you're going to be dealing with a little bit more of an educated grouping when you're looking, at hygienists and the other people that are going to come into your practice. They're going to be looking for other ways to support their financial wellness, and they're going to expect their employer to be able to provide that. So again, when you're competing for employees and you're competing to keep them, that's going to be one component of your full wellness strategy. And I think it's an important one that sometimes people really truly overlook.
Hmm. You're absolutely right. And I think it's time where business owners, and this is just me speaking from my personal experience. Some of my new business owners seem to be aware of this. I sometimes have trouble convincing some of my more established um, clients that have been operating for a while to come to terms with it. Um,
What do
they, they
you, yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you see there?
they would rather talk about implementing a bonus system than setting up a 401k plan, like a tier-based bonus system, and which definitely has its merits. But if they were to fund their funds and somewhere, that's what they think. Oftentimes they think about, okay, you know what? I have this building with all these empty operatory rooms. I'd rather funnel the funds there because each operatory room can produce this much, which would be higher than the percentage growth in my retirement plan. And sometimes, when we're talking about growth and wealth, I always tell them, "Oh, who's saying you can't do both?" Right? It's not like it has to be one or the other. There are different ways to maybe even utilize debt leverage to equip that opportunity room while you use your excess funds to fund a retirement plan and get the best of both worlds, right? So you have the growth on your bottom line by investing more in capex, and then at the same time on the retirement side, you have money that's just going to grow automatically, right? With very little oversight. So I personally don't see why one wouldn't consider implementing one. I definitely see the merits of it. But at the same time, I do understand that they have questions, and maybe that's what it is, that they just need those questions answered before they can fully commit to it.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, what do you think you see, or what's turned the tide for some of your practitioners to say, you
Well,
know what, I see the light?
I think a lot of it is has to do with location. I see most of my clients that are operating out of urban areas because it's getting more and more competitive. They're realizing that this is not something they could just sit on anymore, that they really have to think about offering benefits, 401k being the first one they think of, and then maybe also supplement that with health and other kinds of benefits just to stay competitive with what's already being offered out there.
Gotcha. So if they're in more urban environments versus in they're competing for
Mhm.
employees.
That is correct. That is correct. And you mentioned hygienists. They are still today a unicorn. They're hard to find.
Yeah.
Um, and then even when you find them, let's say you were thinking of bringing them on 3 days a week, but if whatever candidate's coming through is only willing to give you a day or two, you have to adjust your schedule to what they can offer.
Mm.
And
So
then,
really,
yeah,
sorry. So really it comes a competitive edge.
that's right. Absolutely. So, I mean, I think most of our clients do understand the value in funding a retirement plan, how it would benefit them and the tax savings of it. But I also want them to understand that there are more merits to it than just that. And in today's day and age, especially if you're operating out of a competitive location, then it's become more important.
So I would think I absolutely would definitely see that from like I said, recruiting standpoint that we've talked about. One other thing we've also seen with folks, and I'd be curious what you think of this one as well, is that a lot of, I mean, there is some debt, some, college or, education debt that some of your more technical staff comes in with.
Mhm.
And there's definitely, that financial anxiety is very much present. And by offering ways to be able to help with that, and there's part of the Secure Acts have been able to allow, a little bit of the portion of match there was to go to student debt relief. So there's other components that come into play with offering a retirement plan that could be really attractive, especially if you're that kind of competitive environment.
I'm glad you actually brought that up. I'm
Good.
very glad that you brought that up. So let's talk a little bit about that because this is something that I feel like gets a miss when they're considering implementing a 401k. Business owners, if you have team members that have some kind of college debt, right, whether it be another associate who's on W 2, basically an employee with some kind of student debt, they could also benefit from this. I'm going to have Kelly talk more.
Absolutely, they can because it's called a 401k student loan match, and it came out through Secure 2.0 Act. And working with your record keepers, there's a way for when an employee makes a qualifying student loan payment, an employer can contribute a matching amount to the employee's 401k plan. So the employee doesn't necessarily have to contribute to the 401k plan in order to be able to get the employer match. So it's just really it helps it's just another way to, if we want to talk about diversifying your benefit offering and being able to expand that, and again, from a recruiting and retention standpoint, it's just another nice little benefit that's built into you could potentially build into a 401k plan.
Mhm. Absolutely. And then I almost forgot your specialty, right? Talking a little bit about health and longevity, integration of it into uh, retirement plan. How do you think the chronic stress or burnout in professions like dentistry affect long-term financial and health outcomes?
It's a lot. I mentioned earlier about, would you rather spend your time enjoying your retirement or in doctor's offices? One of the biggest things that we see with folks as they're building their practice as well as with employees, but we see where you're not really taking that time for your physical and mental health. So which means, is it from a practitioner standpoint, what do you need in order to be able to meet your physical and mental needs? Do you need to take that break? Do you need to move your body, eat better, all that kind of good stuff that goes along with it, because that will enable you to work longer and feel better while you work. And when it comes to your employees, it's the same thing that, we're all facing this stress, and financial stress could be a big part. And what we see a lot too is that financial stress actually manifests itself into physical stress and mental stress. So it's not just kind of helping on the, it's helping on the financial side if we can get that bucket done, but then also helping on how do we relieve some of that physical and mental stress. And a lot of times employees are, I imagine this with a dental office. I always picture the person leaning over me cleaning my teeth, right? I'm like, that's a physical, it's a physical job. And I don't think we really kind of appreciate how physical it probably is. And what I've seen one office do, they bring in a chiropractor. So the employees can go and get a little adjustment during their lunch hour, during their break. They don't have to go anywhere. So you're leaving some of the obstacles. And that's the biggest thing about providing any kind of wellness to your employees to help with that recruiting retention is how do you alleviate the obstacles to getting that care? And sometimes doing some on-site things can be really, really, truly beneficial to your employees and retaining them and helping them feel seen and heard. But in this context with this on-site chiropractor, they can get their adjustment. So you've alleviated the obstacle of, I don't have time to go to the chiropractor to begin with. I can't take time off. I can't run there between because it's a busy day. I've got family to raise and all that kind of good stuff. The cost is taken care of because the employer is taking care of it. And, just that whole thought process of, oh, I can get my back and arms feel better after being hunched over, and I'm able to actually work longer and I feel better. And any time you can do any of those kind of little things that help, that also puts a positive vibe for all of your employees as well as yourself and that creates better employee engagement, which actually eventually helps your bottom line from a healthy organization standpoint, because your people are nicer to the clients. They feel better. They don't call out sick. All those good things really play into the overall wellness strategy of an organization.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, your team members are the ones that are producing the services or helping you produce the services that you're selling.
Yes,
And in the retail
exactly.
industry, so all the more reasons for you to take care of your team members.
Absolutely. And when you do, they take care of you.
They they can feel it and they want to be part of that culture. Like,
Yep,
I'm receiving and I will be giving.
absolutely. It's a very symbiotic relationship.
Mhm. I have seen that with quite a few of my clients that I consider to be great leaders. Anytime I talk to them, it is never I or how I am doing. It's always a we every
Mm.
single time. And then whenever I compliment him on his numbers looking better this quarter, he'll always praise his team members. That was a joint effort. It was not just him because he could not have achieved those numbers himself. And I'm sure that energy gets projected in his work environment and his employees or his team members can pick up on that.
You know what? It absolutely does. And it's really kind of interesting. It's part of the study I've been doing. I'm actually speaking on this at the HR Southwest conference here in Dallas this fall about how our wellness starts with you, the leader. Like, and we are creatures of communities, and we follow and we put a lot of stock into our leadership because that's just in a way that's kind of our primitive mind. Whether some people are offended that I say that, but it really truly is kind of how we are operating. And when your leader and the person who is who's really leading the ship, so to speak,
Mhm.
really sees and embodies the full wellness aspect for themselves, then they project that to their employees. And when they project that to their employees are healthier and feeling better. So it's not just on the physical and mental, but also on the financial. And that's why these 401k plans tie into that along with your physical and your mental, because it's everybody's on the same boat working together in tangent to move towards the same objective, even though everyone's objective is a little bit different, but we're all still moving forward to have this healthier, more life in our life kind of world environment that we're working with. But it really truly starts with our leaders. And if they don't embody it and they don't embrace it, their organization will not embrace it either.
You're right. It's true. Look, are there any simple wellness shifts that you can recommend that can improve the productivity or reduce the burnout in a practice setting?
So a couple things you really want to, from a practice leader standpoint, one thing you need to it's important to do is to remember we work with humans. So they're not just employees or coworkers or associates, they're human beings. And we all have things that happen in our lives. But the biggest thing that if you really want to kind of help turn, if or improve whatever you're looking to do, is you do need to survey your folks. It's really hard for any of us to be mind readers and understand what our employees are really needing and looking, and what you think, kind of going back to the bonus thing. Well, they would much rather have a bonus than the 401k plan. Would they really? Have you asked them? So it's going, really taking an idea and, taking a survey of your group and finding out what is important to them. What do they feel would make their life easier and more beneficial in, when it comes to any of the wellness benefits that you're going to implement. So getting that information and then actually applying it. And one thing too is really interesting is that, especially if you do have some of your, you are offering benefits across the board, a lot of your providers are going to have some of the tools and resources that you already need, or that your employees are identifying, your humans that you're working with. So many times the first place you need to stop is go back and tap the people who you're already working with. And you might not need to go out and buy something different. So if we're talking about trying to save you money from an organization standpoint, a lot of your wellness, your employee benefits, your health providers, your 401k providers, a lot of them are going to have a lot of the tools that you need that your employees are looking for. So take the time to survey, take the time to work with your current providers and mine what you already have. So when you do go out, if you do need to buy something different to add to the staff or add to the wellness offering, you've done it from more of a standpoint of, okay, I've researched this, we have this covered here, but we really do need to fill in this piece. And that will save you a ton of money, put you a little bit of time in the front point, but it'll also save you a lot from your employees who feel like, oh, they heard me and listened to me, and they're implementing what we said that we needed and we wanted. And again, it comes back to that retention. One thing, Ash, we didn't touch on was the whole when if practitioners are looking for their end point.
That's right. That was actually going to be the next point I move on to.
Okay.
Now, if a dentist is, let's say, 10 to 15 years out from retirement, what should they be doing right now to align their finances and health?
So obviously, from a health perspective, just good thing to make sure make sure you're healthy. Check in on all those boxes from that perspective. From the retirement, you definitely want to be meeting with a financial planner to really get a better idea of what do you want your retirement years look like. And hopefully you've been doing this on an ongoing basis, and your financial planner should be teamed up with your CPA and really kind of working as a team to understand what you're going to want in your later years and how are you going to fund that. And that is definitely a team strategy between the two. The 401k plan is absolutely a portion of that, and there's also other expansions that we can do to that. If we did cash balance or non-qualified deferred compensation, those are other things that could be potentially added to it. But having that kind of team environment to understand what do you need to have, and then strategizing to make sure you are bumping up. It maybe means you have to bump up your savings. You might have to, Ash, you're probably going to be able to fill in on this one better than me, is what do you need to do if you're planning on selling your business, what does that look like? So there's lots of things that come into that key time frame, 10 to 15 years out, that you need to be preparing for. I've unfortunately seen some business owners that think I've seen them where they go 2 years out, I'm going to sell my business. And there's so much that might have to actually be put in place that they don't have enough time to do so. So just having that future planning and working with your team to get you there is, I think, extremely important to help you make sure that when you do get to that point, it's an easy step off and not a frantic, oh my gosh, what am I going to do?
That's right. Yeah. Having a team of experts by your side, uh, taking the time, not rushing into it, because there's
Yes.
multiple components here at play. So allowing yourself that time will make sure that the lifestyle that you're planning on having after retiring is secured.
Yes, absolutely. So that's and what you can add to your team as well too. Now this is getting onto the health side, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of longevity experts out there as well too. And we are at a really fascinating time in our life from a health perspective that there's a lot of tools and resources that you have at your fingertips now that can also enable you to check in on your health and see where you're at and create so put yourself in a better spot so that you really do can enjoy those later years with everything that you've saved and without what you've been able to walk away with. So there might be a little bit of extra planning that you may want to do if you want to add in your doctor to that kind of mix as well. So it's really honestly is a very exciting time in our life from a longevity standpoint.
Kelly, I think that's all the questions I had from my end. Was there anything that you would like to add to this episode? Uh, if not, then maybe at least let our listeners uh, know how they can reach out to you if they have questions or if they're interested in working with you.
Absolutely. No, I think we've covered a lot for people to think about. I love to leave with people just, take care of your health, take care of you. You're the only you've got. So, and again, you can get that money to last longer if you're healthier. So it's a combination of the two for sure. So, make sure you definitely check in on yourself from that perspective and on your employees if you can. As far as, I have I'm a fiduciary retirement plan advisor, so I work with companies 401k plans all the time. So if you ever have any questions, easy to find me on LinkedIn, and I would love to help if anybody wants them, or just even ask if you've got any general questions. I'm always happy to help guide you in the right spot.
Thank you so much again, Kelly.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Ash.
Of course. All right. Thanks for listening today. Be sure to subscribe to Beyond by Wings on your favorite podcast platform. For more information, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, or reach out to us on our website. You can also shoot us an email at info@eandassociates.com.